So let me pull up the homework real quick. Sorry for the delay. Let's get this going. Okay. So for the homework here, yeah, they had the instructions for recording your stuff. So, which line of code runs without error? So, which one do you guys think is the correct answer? Real quick.
D.
Yeah, D is the correct answer. Reason is you have a type, you have a name, and you're setting it to a value, and you always have to have that semicolon. This is just basic syntax, and glad you guys got that first try. Number two was the value of num at the end of this code segment. So okay, let's see here. Int number starts at 2, int num starts at 12. Number is equal to num. Okay, so that means that number is equal to 12 too. And then num minus equals number divided by 2. So it'll be 12 minus 12 divided by 2, which is 6. So that'd be 6 in the end, so your answer should be C. For number, did you guys understand that explanation real quickly?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. For 3, what type of variable is happy?
Can you explain two again?
Explain 2 a bit more?
Yeah.
Okay, so here number starts at 2, right? And then here the other variable called num starts at 12. And then you're setting number equal to num, meaning you're setting number equal to the value here. So it means now number is 12 and num is 12. Now, what minus equals means is its value minus whatever this is. So because num is 12, that's 12 minus, and then here, number divided by 2, right? Well, we set number equal to 12 over here, so it should be 12 divided by 2. So 12 minus 12 divided by 2, according to PEMDAS, the division goes first, so 12 divided by 2 is 6. And 12 minus 6 will give you 6. That make a bit more sense?
Yeah.
Number 3, what type of variable is happy? Correct answer is a string. Because if you see here, you see the double quotes, right? Anything within double quotes is usually a string. Any type of word, sentence, most likely a string. Should be a string, actually. Number 4, what variable type holds only true or false? What do you guys think that is?
Blue.
Yes, right. It's a Boolean. Booleans are true or false variables. Integers are whole numbers. Characters are just like single symbols, and strings are, you already know that. So number 5, which line of code prints the console without error? Okay. Now, this one looks a little bit tricky, doesn't it? Does anyone know what this could be?
I think
C.
it's C. It's gonna be it's gonna be C console dot right line
C.
parentheses. Yeah. It's gonna be C.
It's right. It's C. It's
Yeah.
just a little bit tricky to look at because it's a bit bulky, but it has console.writeLine, which is the function you should use, the string inside of it, and then you end off with the semicolon. Good job. Number 6, right? Yeah. Which line of code receives input from the user and stores it as a string variable? Name without error. Name. So far, so good is equal to console.readLine. But there's no semicolon. Can't be that. This one doesn't even have variable type. This one doesn't even have the right like function, so it has to be C. Put to the console at the end of this code segment. Okay, well, you have int year is equal to 2025, and you have double rate is equal to 2.0f. And then you're basically outputting to the console the year times the rate. So that should be 2025 double, but because it's an int times a double, you would end up with a decimal sign here. So it'll be 4050.0. For number 8, what is the variable type for 4? 4 is a number, 4 is a whole number, There's no point 0 or point 0f, so it's great to assume that it's an integer. Number 9, true or false, the default value of an initialized Boolean value the default value of the initialized Boolean is true. Do you guys think that's true or false?
True.
False.
False.
False. True.
The correct answer is false. If you have a Boolean value and you don't set it to anything, by default, it is false. Now, for number 10, what variable type will the score on this homework be? Anyone know that?
Int.
B.
Integer.
That's
Integer.
correct. Because it is like a 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10. So your final score will be an integer. That should be all the homework. Did everyone understand?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll take that as a yes.
My homework. It's overdue for some reason, but I was absent during the first class.
Yeah, don't worry, Nate. I received your scores, okay? So, I received all the answers that you have, posted in the chat. I've recorded that, so I'm going to enter the homework score for you, okay? Don't worry.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Dhruva,
So
I have messaged you something in the chat, so maybe you could make an announcement now.
okay. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. So for the quiz, the top scores. We have Anirudh Rajesh. Good job. Everyone clap. And Snigdha Gudnapali. Good job, y'all. Quizzes are hard. Actually, no, I'm pretty sure some ones are kind of easy, but like honestly, proud of you guys.
Both of them got a 5 on 5. Good job.
So let me just real quick bring out the slideshow for everyone, and we can get started with our official lecture. Oh, okay. Well, maybe. So today is class 2. Welcome everyone. So let's start off with conditional statements. Conditional statements give you a true or false value depending on the condition. As an example, x is greater than 10, y is equal to 2, a is not equal to 5, b is less than or equal to 7. And what these statements really do is they're asking a question. X is greater than 10, that's asking, is x greater than 10? Y is equal to 2. A little quirk you'll notice is that we're doing equal instead of equals. That's because, real quick, an equal is comparing things, and an equals is setting things. So y equal to 2 is saying, is y equal to 2? A exclamation mark equals 5, exclamation mark equals means not equals. So is A not equal to 5? And B less than or equal to 7? That's asking, well, is B less than or equal to 7? Now we can.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you please slow down a bit because I felt it was a little faster. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is everyone understanding that so far? Any questions?
I'd also like to add that it doesn't just work for numbers. You can compare two strings. You can ask if a string is equal to another string. Depending on if it makes sense to ask that question. Like you can't ask is a string greater than another string. We can ask if it's equal or if it's not equal. And same for other types of variables as well.
Just like what we did last time, is it possible for you guys to open, the Visual Studio also there and
Yeah,
then,
I have it
yeah,
open.
show them, the examples, whatever you're trying to explain here. That way they could understand better.
Okay, let me get that set up. Sorry for the delay. Let's get that going right now.
All right, I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah.
So, as an example of a conditional statement, I could ask stuff like, and you're going to learn what this if means later on. But as an example of a conditional statement, you can ask, does 1 equal 1? That's a valid conditional statement. That will always give you true, because 1 is obviously equal to 1. If you ask if 0 is equal to 1, well, 0 is not equal to 1, so this will always give you false. So you can test that by doing console.writeLine, and you can write your conditional statement in here and see if it outputs as true or false. So if I have 1 equals to 1, and then I run the application, it might take a second depending on how fast your computer is, and it outputs as true in the top left here. So you know that this statement will always return true. If I replace it with a 0 and try to run again, it will give false. So you can use this to experiment with different statements. You can obviously use variables. It doesn't need to be a number. You can have a string. Let's say represents a name. And then you can ask if this name is equal to something else. And this will return false. This should return false because Manmohan is not equal to Dhruva. So when you run it, it returns false. So you can compare multiple data types, but stuff like the greater than or less than operators only work for numbers, such as floating point numbers and integers.
Now, when we move on to Boolean operations, you can do operations on Boolean values. So the not operator, which we saw earlier, is an exclamation mark. So you'd have the exclamation mark before the name of the variable, which in this case, let's just assume we made a Boolean named B, right? A bool B. And not B means it's the opposite of whatever that variable is. So bool B by default, right? The value is false, as we saw in the homework. So now if we do like console.writeLine and we have not B, if you look at it, you would have the exact opposite of what B is equal to. Because it's equal to false right now, then if you run it, you should get true. The not operator will always give you the opposite of what a Boolean is. Now, if you did the or operator, B1 or B2, let's say you had another Boolean and you just called it C, for example, right? And let's just say that C is equal to true. And let's say we had a console.writeLine again. And in it, we have C, and then the or symbol is a 2 straight lines. And let's say C or true. Now, let me explain what an or is. An or compares the two, and it will always give you true if at least one of those values are true. So even if C is false, for example, it would still give you true because you have another true there. It's only going to give you a false back if both of them are false. So for example, if you like set C equal to false, for example, on start, and then you just ran it right now, you should have a true value because that's how ORs work. Now, if you did C or false in the right line, for example, then you would end up with a false because neither of them are true. And finally, we have and operators, B1 and B2. And operators are used using two ampersands. And essentially what an and operator does, it's saying, hey, is this value true and is this value true? So if we look here, they're both false, right? So what do we think we're going to get as a result?
False.
Exactly. If you run it right now, you should get a false. Now, let's say that you start C off as true, right? If C starts out with a value of true, then when you run it, what do you think will happen?
True.
No, you'll get another false because an and operator looks for if both of them are true. But only one of them is true. C is the only true one here. The only time it's going to give you a true is when C and the other value is true. So let's say we switch out the false for true. What do you think we're finally going to get now?
True.
True. That's right.
So,
You would get a true value because because C is true and you're comparing it to a true value. You have true and true. True and true equals true. True and false equals false. False and true equals false. False and false equals false. And those are the basic Boolean operations. Are there any questions?
I would also like to add you can chain operations together. So you can have a not here, and this will turn this into a false, and then do the and operation. Or you can OR this with another false. Then it'll do this operation and then this operation. So it goes from left to right. And you can use parentheses, just like in math, you can use parentheses to separate stuff out. All right, and now we're going to talk about if statements. If statements allow you to run code only if a condition is true. So the syntax starts out as an if with parentheses and then brackets. Everything inside the brackets will only run if the thing inside the parentheses is true. So if I put true here, then the stuff inside these brackets will always run. So we have console.write line and write the code, how to spell, ran, and I run the program, you will see it says the code ran. But if I then replace it with a false, this will not run. And you see Visual Studio is actually telling you that it's not going to run at all because it's analyzed the code. But if I run it anyway, it outputs nothing. So inside these parentheses, the code will only run if this condition is true. So as an example of this, you can have a Boolean. Let's just call it one code for now, and let's set it to true. You can put, instead of just writing true or false, you can have run code in here. And then only if run code is true, it will run this code. Now, keep in mind, the inside of the if statement is technically this portion. After the closing bracket, even if it's on the same line, like right here, it still doesn't count as being inside the if statement. So just be aware of that. Now, there's also something called an else statement. This is the syntax for it. There are no parentheses for it because it only runs if this code didn't run. So if this, otherwise run this. That's basically how you should think about it. So if I copy this write line statement down into the else statement, and I say something else, this code will only run if one code is false. Otherwise, this code will run and it will ignore this line. So if you run the code how it is right now, you see it says the code ran, which means this line ran, but not the one below it, because run code is true. However, if we set run code to false and run again, it says the other code ran, which is telling us that this first write line command did not run, but the second one did. Now, what if you have multiple conditions in your check? Then you can chain if and else statements together. If you write if with a space after the else, with parentheses and with brackets, and then have another condition here, let's say if not run code, then if this condition is true, it will run this code. Otherwise, if this condition is true, it's going to run this code. So let's create a new variable to experiment with this. Boolean run other code. Let's set it to true. And let's put it in here. Now, because run code is false, this line is going to get skipped. But because run other code is true, in here is going to run this code. So let's say console.write line other code ran. Now, right now is the exact same thing is going to happen as with just the else statement, because one code is false and one other code is true. But let's see. Yep, other code ran. So this line here ran and not this one. However, if we set this one to false, if we set run other code to false, then none of this will run at all. So let's see. And yep, there is nothing here. So none of this code ran because it checked this condition because it's false. It skipped this line. Then it checked this condition. It was false, so it skipped this line and exited the program. Now we can chain these together forever, so we can have another else statement at the end here and say console.write line, and we can say something like no code ran. And because these are both false, it's going to skip over this line, then skip over this line, and then run this line. And see, no code ran, so it skipped over those two lines and went to this one. Now, what if we set both one code and one other code to true? Something interesting happens here. It only runs the first console.write line command, because how it goes is it checks this condition. Because it's true, it runs this command, but it skips all the other else statements because of how the else clause works. This will only ever check its condition. This if statement will only ever have the opportunity to check itself if this code did not run. So if you have, let's say, 5 possibilities of what might happen, but only one of them will happen, you can use if and else statements for this. Just be careful of order of operations. The top always runs first. Now,
Are there any questions so far?
I have a question, sir.
sure.
So I actually opened up the. I've actually opened up the Microsoft Visual Studio. But the thing that I'm circling is I'm trying to copy your code, and I'm trying to do it, but it just keeps on throwing me like 5 to 6 errors.
Did you create your project correctly?
What do you mean?
So you need to create a C# console project.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Or can you just follow along? Maybe after class we can try to solve your problem.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, moving on. What if you want your code to run more than once? Well, you can just copy and paste it over and over again, but that's not really the best. So there are things called loops. So the most basic type of loop starts off like this. You have an integer. It's just convention to call this I. We set it to 0. And then we use a while statement. While I is less than length, whatever this length is. So I'll put in a number in a second. And then we increase I by 1. So if we set length to 10, let's say, the code in here, the code inside these brackets will run 10 times. So let's say we do a console dot write line and we output the number I. Then when we run our program, it outputs the numbers 1 to 9. Notice how it goes from 0 to 9. Because we start off at 0 and we don't end it at 10, we end it before 10. So if you put a less than or equal to, then it will end at 10. So if you run it again, it goes from 0 to 10. So that's something to note. Now, what a while statement does is it runs the code in here inside the brackets repeatedly while this statement in here is true. So we can do a lot of things with this. We can set I to, let's say, -10, and when we run it, it will go from -10 to 9. All right, and now let's do a pop quiz. Dhruva, if you can start it, please.
Okay, let's do a pop quiz. Right there. And we'll give you guys the 1 minute.
Dhruva, could you please record that?
Okay.
All right, so the right answer will be the second one. If x is equal with 2 equal signs to true. Remember, 1 equal sign is assignment. So if you have 1 equal sign, you're setting the value to true. 2 equal signs is for comparison. You're trying to see if it's equal to 2. So 1 equal sign is for assignment, 2 equal signs are for comparison. So this, going back to the loops, this is one kind of loop, but there are also a different kind of loops. The syntax is a little bit different. Instead of having a while at the beginning, you have a do with your curly braces, then a while at the end with your condition. Let's say I is less than 1. What this does is it runs once and then it checks a condition. Then it runs again until the condition is false. So this statement will always run at least once. So if we do a console dot from a right line and output I, you also need to increment I by 1. If you run this, it'll be the exact same results as before, going from a -10 to 0 in this case. However, if we set 1 to be less than -10, let's say -20, and run it, it will run once -10 and then halt, because -20 is less than -10, so it will exit immediately. If you attempted this with the regular while loop, it will not run at all. Sometimes this is desirable, sometimes you don't want that, but this is an option. Having it always run at least once. So yeah, I think we can have another pop quiz now.
What does I plus plus mean? Yeah.
I plus plus, it increases I by 1. So there's whatever variable it is. So if you have int, let's say a, and let's set it equal to 0. If you have a plus plus, it will increase a by 1. You can also replace it to minus minus and have it go down by 1. Depends on what you want.
What happens if you just say like minus only once? Or plus only once?
Then the computer will yell at you because you did something weird.
Okay, the time for pop quiz is up now. So let's look at the results. Which conditional statement outputs true if x is greater than 4? So, yeah, the correct answer is the first one. If meant x greater than 4. If you look at the second one, if x that's greater than or equal to 4. And if you look at the third one, that's if x is equal to 4. And then the fourth one is if x is less than 4. So it's just a matter of reading those signs. Good job to everyone who got it right. And yeah. None of them had a. Well, actually, the thing is, you don't have a comma at the. You don't have a semicolon at the end of an if statement. So if Manmohan could go to the console output quickly, and if you were to just type out if, like an if statement, right? Notice how after the parentheses, you don't add a semicolon. That is a totally valid statement as long as you have the curly brackets underneath. Or I'm pretty sure even in some cases, I think you don't even need the curly bracket.
If you don't have any curly brackets, then the if statement will just be on the one line in front of it. So this tends to be some popular syntax right here. Also moving it to the same line. This will only have the if statement under the console right line command right here. So if you want to have an if statement for multiple lines, just use a semicolon. But you don't really need to know this at all. It's not necessary. All right, but going back to the loops, the most popular type of loop that you'll see the most is what's called a for loop. So if you have for int I equals 0 with a semicolon, I is less than length, whatever length is, we'll give it a value later, I plus plus with semicolons, and let's say length is 10. This this for loop is a compacted form of the while loop we looked at earlier. So lots of people like to have this one. This is the one you're going to see the most by far. And then in here, you're going to have console dot right line. Let's say this is output I, and we run the program. outputs as we did before with the original while loop from 0 to 9. So how it works is there are 3 statements inside a for loop. There's the initialization of the variable you are looping, there is the condition, and then there is a increment or decrement. So you have initializing a variable. It does not need to be I. In fact, it does not need to be an integer. It can be whatever you want. And then there's a semicolon at the end. And then there's a comparison. So the for loop will run while this condition is true. Once the condition goes false, it will halt the for loop. And then this is an increment or decrement. You're going to have 2 pluses or 2 minuses, depending on how you want to set up your for loop. And how it works is after it runs the code in here, it will run this line and check this statement. So this first statement only runs once, and these 2 statements run every loop at the beginning of the loop. So this is an extremely compact version. You can edit the values around. You can have a -10 here, and it will go from -10 to 9, as you can see here. You can go down to -20 and decrement instead. So it will count. Oh, notice I made a mistake here. You need to switch the sign of, you switch a side of the greater than or less than sign, because this is now a smaller variable, smaller number, I mean. And now we'll count down from -10 to 19. So this is extremely compact. Lots of people like this version. There is a really quick way to write this. If we're specifically using Visual Studio, you can write for and press tab twice, and then it'll automatically type the syntax out for you, and you can change the length to whatever you want. So extremely quick and extremely customizable. It's basically the same thing as a while loop, but more compact.
Okay, so here's a pop-up quiz. It's a fairly simple one, so I don't believe it should take too long. That's the end of the poll, and here are the results.
So I believe there's a bit of confusion here. But the correct answer is the first one because, well, true is always true. The third answer could be true if both conditions are the same condition. If they're the same condition, then it would always be true. But if they're different conditions, then they will not always be true. So there's a bit of confusion here, but that's fine.
I do believe that you guys read that as condition equal to condition, as in like the condition was the same variable though, which is good job to you if that's what you were thinking. But that is kind of on our part. That is, those are 2 different conditions, so they could be the same variable or different variables, which is why the first one is always the best bet if it's always going to output true.
Will the Google Slides on the right be available to us?
2 minutes to solve that question. And then we'll pick on someone to share their screen and show their code. And we'll review that code and then we'll write it. So this is the first question. It's basically output true if the user inputs a number more than 4. It shouldn't be too hard, so we'll give you guys around 2 minutes for this. I'll check with you guys in 2 minutes.
Do we do this online or an app, or like write it down?
You can do it on your Visual Studio. Okay, so time is up. Would anyone like to share their code? Or you guys can raise your hands using the reactions. Okay, since we have no one that's willing to share the code, I'll just call on someone. So Anush, would you like to share your code and show what you have done?
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mashak.
I actually kind of needed help with the code for the if condition because it's saying that if the user puts more than 4, it's true, but how am I gonna write that into the if condition? Do I
So
need
you're
to
just
put
gonna print it to the console.
so
So you can do console.writeLine, or we'll just go over the code then. So since most of you guys didn't get it, so first of all, you have to write console.writeLine, enter a number, which is basically just writing the code, like writing the text out
yeah,
for the input,
I
and
did
then
that, and then I just needed help on how to make the if condition for it.
yeah, we'll get to that part. We'll just start from the beginning, and then we have string user input is equals to console.readLine, which is basically just going to take the input from the user,
Yeah.
and then after that we're gonna have int number is equals to convert that to int32 user input, which is going to convert that string into a number.
User
Now we'll write our if statement, which is if number is greater than 4,
equal
we're going to write console.writeLine true. Else we'll just write false. Okay. So let's try running this program. So we can see that if we enter something like 5, we'll get true because of the if condition. So does anybody have any questions on this one? Oh, it's probably a mistake then. Okay, we can move on to the next question then. Okay, I'll give you guys 2 minutes to solve this one. Okay, time is up. So we'll go over this question now. So we're basically just going to keep the same code structure, but just change the if statements because that's the main thing that we're working on. So it says output true if the user inputs a number not equal to 0 but greater than 5. So the one thing that you have to realize in this question is that the to satisfy this condition, we only need to add one if statement, which is that number 1 has to be greater than 5. Because if a number is greater than 5, it cannot equal 0. So therefore, our code will output true for the correct conditions. Does anybody have any questions on this? Okay, we'll move on to question number 3 then. So question number 3 says output true if the user inputs a value greater than 5 but less than 10. So I'll give you guys a hint. This should be done with 2 if conditions, 2 Boolean expressions. Okay, time is up. So let's go over this question now. So we'll keep the same code again because it's just we're changing the if conditions. The one thing that you guys have to realize is that in this case, we have a lower bound and an upper bound. Our lower bound is that the value has to be greater than 5 and it has to be less than 10. So whenever you guys see the prompt by yourself, you word it by yourself, you're going to know what type of operator to use. So because you said and, we're going to use and. So we need to add an and operator to the number 2 is greater than 5. And then we're going to have number is less than 10 because that's a condition. And yeah, that's basically the code for this question. These ones are pretty simple. So if nobody has any questions, we can move on to question number 4. So for this one, you have to create a for loop. Yeah, go ahead.
Srish, maybe we'll give some extra time for them. Until 3, whoever has got the right output and would like to share your screen, please let us know. Okay, how many of you are not able to work on this? Please let me know. Can you guys hear me?
I feel like I need extra minutes.
Yeah, then we'll give extra time, Srish. I think, going forward, let's give them like 3 to 4 minutes per question.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. So
Yeah.
for this one, I'll give you guys around 4 minutes because it's a new concept compared to the previous ones. So you have
Yeah.
to create a for loop that outputs a number from 0 to 10. I'll
I
give you
don't
guys 4
really
minutes.
get question 4.
Question 4. So do you remember what we learned about loops today, or were you not able to understand that part?
It was not hard to remember.
You can look at your notes, like you can look at the lecture notes that are on the Agora website to review, because we don't expect you to know the syntax on your first try, so you can do that, and then code based on that. Yeah.
I need a successful code for number 4.
Sounds good. We'll go over it in another 2 minutes. So you can, if you want, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you to share your code. Okay, we'll go over the problem now. So if you guys want to volunteer, please raise your hand and I'll call on someone.
Yeah, I'm raising it.
Okay, yeah, Nate, you can share your screen.
Okay.
So before Nate shares the screen, you have to switch the screen share to side by side mode. If you guys don't have that option, you have to select his screen to look at his screen, because Manmohan would also be sharing his screen side by side. Okay, you can go ahead.
Am I sharing?
Yeah, you're
your
sharing your
screen
screen.
shares apparent.
Okay. Okay, let me see here. So, would you like to explain your code on what you did?
Yeah, so this is my code. I did it since it's less than or equal to, because if I just did less than, it would be 9, not 10. And so I made 0 because it has to include 0. It starts at 0. And then I put a plus plus, so it goes up from 0 all the way to 10.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's good. So, we can move on to the next question now.
Can we have a pop before that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's have a quick pop quiz, just as how everyone is doing. So here, this is the quiz.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Right. Can't you, for the code, can't you do I is less than 11 as well?
Yeah, I is less than 11 also works, as long as it prints numbers 0 to 10.
Oh.
Because it'll stop before it reaches 11. So yeah, that works.
Okay, that's the end of the poll.
Okay. So for this question, it was which type of the loop runs always at least once. So about half of you got it right, which is do while loop, because do while loop runs the code first and then checks the condition. But for and while loop always check the condition first and then run the code inside. And for each loop is not a valid loop. Okay. Okay, so we can go back to question number 5 now. Okay, so this one, you have to create a for loop that outputs a number from 10 to 20, but for this one, it has to be exclusive. So let's see how you guys do. So I'll give you guys another 4 minutes for this question.
But Srish, I think some of them wanted to show their work for question 4, right?
Yeah, we reviewed it already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, so basically you can't use 10 and 20, right?
Yeah. Okay, so time is up. So Anush, would you like to share your screen and show your code?
Sure.
Okay.
Think this is how you do it. Okay, so this is my code. Yeah. Yeah, so this is my code. Then when I run it, can you see this?
Yeah, we can see it.
No, I mean like the code running thing. Then wait. Then when I ran it, it did this.
Yeah, that's good. That works. Okay. So does anybody have a different solution that they would like to share?
Can I share mine?
Sure. Okay, so for this one, you started from 11 and then went on till 20. So yeah, that looks good. Okay. Okay, so if nobody has any questions, we can move on to question number 6. Okay, so number 6 is that you have to create a loop that outputs the multiples of 5 from 1 to 1,000. So I'll give you guys, actually it's supposed to be from 0 to 1,000. Okay, so I'll give you guys 5 minutes to solve this question because this might be, this is a little bit more challenging than the previous questions. Okay, Warren, would you like to share your screen and show what you got?
Sure.
I don't think we can see your screen. Okay, there we go. So would you like to explain your code?
I used the same code like last time, but I put 0 to 1001 because it doesn't print 1001. It starts with 1,000. And I put I is equal to I plus 5. So it prints plus 5 every single time.
Okay, yeah, that's good. So basically what you had to do is that you had to start from 0 and then add increment by 5 each time because you want it to be a multiple of 5. That's correct. Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so we can move on to the next question then.
Can you see the answer for number 1?
The multiples of 5?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just write it out right now then. So 4 and yeah, so it's less than or equals to. Yeah, that works. And then if and then we just plus 5 each time. And then we have a console dot write line I.
Oh.
So you're just basically adding 5 each time because you're guaranteed a multiple of 5 if you start from 0 every time you add 5.
Now, keep in mind there's more than one way to solve this problem. This is just one of the ways to solve this problem.
Yeah. Okay. So if nobody has any questions, we can move on to question number 7.
Manmohan, would you like to add on to what are the other ways how we could, solve that?
Sure, you can use a while loop. It'll be similar syntax to this, except it'll be int. Let's use j is equal to 0 while, wait for a semicolon, and while j is less than 1,000, have j equal to j plus 5, and then you output j with the console dot write line.
I had a different type of solution.
We can take a look. Would you like to share your screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that also works. So that's the modulus operator, but we haven't covered that yet. So basically what the modulus operator does is that if it's a multiple, if the front number is a multiple of the second number, then it returns 0. So it basically returns how far away the I number is from the nearest multiple of 5. but we haven't taught that yet, so we'll stick to the previous method, but this one also works. This one is also a valid solution.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we can move on to question number 7 then. So that for this one, you have to output numbers from 0 to whatever the user inputs in increments of 2, except if the number is 20. So this should, I'll give you guys 3 minutes to solve this problem. Okay, someone you can you show us what you did?
Okay. So I kind of used it like how I used it last time, but this time I just made I plus 2, so all the 2's in 0 to 20 would work.
I think you might have misread the question because you have to print the numbers to whatever the user inputs, and you have to exclude 20 from that input if it's on the looping line. Okay, we'll just go over the solution then. So first we have to input what the user wrote. So int user input is equals to console.readline. Okay, and then we have the for loop. So for int x is equals to 0, x is less than user input number, I plus equals 2. And then inside the input, we have if condition. So if I is not equal to 20, then we print the I. Because the question specifically said that we have to exclude the number 20 from the input, from the output. So yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
How does the like beginning part work? Like the int user input number equals convert to 32?
So the console.readline, whenever you use it, it returns a string of whatever the user inputs. So you have to convert that to integer so you can use it like an integer. So that's why you have to convert to int 32. Okay. Do you have any more questions?
But like where does the user input the number?
Oh, that's in the console. So the console is the thing at the bottom. So whenever you run it, it's going to open a console for you. So if you can have that, if you can run the code.
Here, I'm just gonna comment out all this code so it doesn't get in our way. And then I'm gonna run the code. And then it's gonna take a little bit to run. All right, and now it's waiting for me to input a number. So I'm gonna input, let's say, the number 50. And then press enter. And then console.readline takes that 50 and gives it to us as a string. But then we need to convert that to a number. So then convert that to int32, converts it to a number, which then we use for our program. And then now you see here, it converts, or it outputs all numbers from 0 to 50 in a set of 2, excluding 50. But it also skips 20, so it goes to 18, skips 20, because we check if I is not equal to 20 before we output it.
Okay, so we can move on to question number 8. Okay, so for this one, you basically have to output true for for the amount of number that the user inputs. So if the user inputs 5, you have to print true 5 times. So I'll give you guys 2 minutes to solve this problem. Okay, so since we're running out of time, we'll just go over the solution for this one. So we're just going to keep the user input number because we still have to take the input. So we'll just cross out the for loop for now.
So for int I is equals to 0. So we're gonna run it till user input number. And we don't set equals to here, because if we set equals to, it's going to print the number one more than that's required, because our I starts from 0. So and then we're just gonna write console.write line true. Okay. So this is the code for number 8. So does anybody have any questions? Okay, then this is the end of the classwork then.
I do believe there were few people who had some issues with working on the Visual Studio. I got some messages in the chat, so I would request them to stay back. So otherwise, I think we are done for today. I've just posted some links in the chat. Um, this session, whatever we are having, is only related to the C sharp, which is related, which is very specific to the game development. So we are not covering the entirety of the C sharp over here. So I would recommend you going through some tutorials. I've given some links which I received from our content management team. So just go through these, and uh, as an enrichment, you could learn additional stuff, so that that would be easy for you for the future sessions. Um, and then another announcement that I had is related to the homework. The cutoff date for homework for session 2 is February 18th, 11 p.m. PST. So today we, had some issues with wrong entries. So please make sure by February 18th you're done with your homework and record your answers there. So from next session, I'm not going to, entertain the updates over there. Okay. So other than that, if you have any questions, I would recommend you to stay back. Otherwise, we are done for today. Thank you so much.